You've walked past them. You've spent them. You've probably got one sitting in your pocket right now, but what if I told you one of those ordinary-looking pennies could be worth thousands, even tens of thousands, of dollars? Today, we're counting down 5 of the rarest, most valuable pennies in U.S. history. These aren't just coins, they're hidden treasures that could be sitting in your change jar right now. So grab your magnifying glass, and let's dive into the world of small cents with big value. Number 1. Ever looked at a simple penny and thought, it's just 1 cent? Most people do. But what if I told you that a single penny, minted in 1968, might secretly be worth more than your monthly paycheck? Or even more than your car? The United States 1-cent coin from 1968 might look plain at first glance. Lincoln's familiar profile on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Just another coin jingling at the bottom of a drawer, right? Not quite. Because in the fascinating world of numismatics, the 1968 penny holds mysteries that even seasoned collectors are still discovering. Let's step back for a moment. The year 1968 was a turning point for American coinage. The U.S. Mint had just weathered a coin shortage in the early 60s, and in 1965, it stopped putting mint marks on coins entirely to discourage hoarding. But by 1968, mint marks returned, and with them, a new chapter began. Now here's where things get interesting. The 1968 1-cent coin was struck at 3 different facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and for the first time since 1955, San Francisco. That little S mark under the date is your first clue that this penny might not be ordinary. Most people don't even notice it. But collectors? They're on the hunt for it. Why? Because the San Francisco Mint in 1968 produced not just regular pennies, but proof coins. These were not meant for circulation. Proofs are specially struck, with razor-sharp details and a mirror-like finish. They're beautiful, but more importantly, they're rare. And if one of these found its way into circulation, you might be holding a small fortune. But even the regular strikes, those meant for everyday pockets, weren't all the same. You see, something peculiar was happening at the Denver and San Francisco mints in 1968. Some coins came out looking just a little off. Tiny imperfections, misalignments, doubled features. And in the world of rare coins, those so-called imperfections, they can mean everything. One of the most sought-after variations is the 1968 S double die obverse. Let that sink in. A double die means that during the minting process, the die, the stamp used to strike the coin, shifted ever so slightly. The result? A doubling effect, most visible on the date, the word Liberty, or the motto, In God We Trust. But spotting one isn't easy. You'll need a magnifying glass, or even better, a jeweler's loupe. Under close inspection, those doubled letters stand out. Like shadows. Like echoes of a second strike. That's when your heart starts pounding. Because if you're looking at a 1968 S doubled die, you might be holding a piece of numismatic history. And there's more. Some 1968 pennies were struck on leftover planchets, coin blanks, from previous years. These transitional errors are incredibly rare. Imagine a penny struck on a 1967 planchet. Or worse, a foreign coin blank that somehow slipped into the hopper. These are the unicorns of coin collecting. Then there are the off-center strikes. Coins where the design is pushed to one side, leaving a blank crescent of copper. Or the misaligned dies that create a ghostly shift in the design. To most people, these look like mistakes. To collectors? They're treasures. Even color matters. Yes, color. Pennies come in 3 broad color categories: red, red-brown, and brown. The redder the penny, the better preserved it is. And the more desirable it becomes to collectors looking for that perfect specimen. But how do you know if your 1968 penny is the rare kind? Start by flipping through your change. Look for that tiny mint mark, especially the S. Then examine the details. Any doubling? Off-center features? An unusual color? If you spot anything strange, don't toss it back into circulation. Get it graded. Because in the coin world, A certified grade can turn a maybe into a masterpiece. Now here's the moment you've been waiting for. What's it all worth? If you've got a 1968 penny with one of those rare double die errors, especially one with sharp details and full luster, its value could soar. In pristine, collector-grade condition, the right 1968 penny has sold for anywhere between $4,800 and $70,000 at auction. So next time you see a penny on the sidewalk, don't pass it by, pick it up. Take a closer look, because that humble coin might just be a hidden treasure, and now you know exactly what to look for. Number 2. How often do we glance at a penny and think, nothing of it? Tossed in a jar, dropped on the ground, or forgotten in the bottom of a pocket, most of us never stop to wonder what stories these little copper coins carry. But today, we're shining a spotlight on one penny in particular. A quiet survivor from the late 1970s. The 1978 Lincoln cent, this unassuming coin, minted during the tail end of a turbulent decade, might just be hiding secrets that could transform a casual collector into a lucky treasure hunter. Let's take a journey into the world of the 1978 penny, and why some of them are worth far more than anyone ever expected. Now, by 1978, the Lincoln cent had already seen over 60 years of circulation. Designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, the obverse still carried the dignified profile of President Abraham Lincoln. But if you look closer, there are subtle differences, some nearly invisible to the naked eye, but powerful enough to raise the coin's value by thousands. The year 1978 didn't bring any flashy redesigns or major minting events, which is exactly what makes this coin so fascinating. Because the errors and variations found in this year weren't planned. They slipped through the cracks. Accidents in metal, mistakes in machines, and tiny shifts in the minting process turned ordinary coins into rare collectibles. Let's start with where these coins came from. The 1978 penny was struck at 3 U.S. mint facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia had no mint mark. Those from Denver show a tiny D beneath the date. And the San Francisco mint? In 1978, it didn't produce regular circulation pennies, but it did strike proof coins. Now, proof coins are made for collectors. They're struck with extreme care, using polished dies and planchets to achieve mirror-like surfaces. They never enter general circulation. Or at least, they're not supposed to. On very rare occasions, a proof penny might end up where it doesn't belong, spent at a store, dropped on the sidewalk, handed over in change. If you find one of these escaped proof coins from 1978, you may be looking at a numismatic jackpot. But there's more. Some of the most exciting finds from 1978 aren't just about where the coin was made, but how it was made. Enter the double die. A double die error occurs when the die used to strike the coin was misaligned during the engraving process. The result? Letters and numbers appear doubled, especially in words like "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date itself. Collectors are always watching for this kind of doubling. On a 1978 penny, even the slightest hint of a doubled die, especially on the obverse, can transform it from common to collectible in an instant. But that's just one kind of error. The world of 1978 pennies is full of surprises. There are coins with off-center strikes, where part of the design is pushed to the edge or missing entirely. There are die cracks and cuds, raised bumps or blobs of metal where the die was damaged or breaking apart during minting. These kinds of flaws, while accidental, make each coin completely unique. Some 1978 pennies were even struck on the wrong metal. That's right, transitional errors. Imagine a coin that was supposed to be a penny, but ended up on a dime planchet. Thinner, lighter, and worth a fortune if authenticated. And don't forget about the small details. The sharpness of Lincoln's profile. The clarity of the steps on the Lincoln Memorial. These tiny elements help determine a coin's grade, and the higher the grade, the more valuable the coin. Even the color matters. Red pennies, those with full original luster and no signs of tarnish, are highly sought after. Red-brown or brown pennies are more common. So if you stumble upon a blazing red 1978 cent in near-perfect condition, that's a find worth celebrating. So where does that leave us? You might have a handful of old pennies sitting in a jar at home. You might have a 1978 cent tucked away in a coin book. But until you take a closer look, until you examine it with care, maybe even under magnification, you'll never know what you really have, because buried in those pennies could be a mistake. A rarity. A piece of American history, and now, the part you've been waiting for, some rare 1978 pennies, especially those with doubled dies, off-metal errors, or flawless proof-like features, have sold for serious money at auctions. Depending on condition and rarity, these hidden treasures have brought in anywhere from $4,100 to $64,000, so go ahead, check your change. Dig through your drawers. That old penny might just change everything, because sometimes, the smallest coins carry the biggest surprises. Number 3. Every so often, a coin comes along that flips the script on what we think we know. It's small, it's copper, or maybe zinc. It has a tiny D stamped below the date. It's a 1982 D Lincoln penny. And while millions were made, one tiny detail separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. A detail so subtle that most people never notice. But collectors, they're obsessed with it. Let's peel back the layers of one of the most talked about and mysterious pennies in modern American coinage. The year was 1982. Inflation was squeezing the economy, copper prices were soaring, and the U.S. Mint made a decision that would change the penny forever. For over a century, 1-cent coins had been made primarily from copper. But by the early 1980s, making a penny was costing nearly as much as the coin was worth. The solution? A new composition, less copper, more zinc. Starting in the middle of 1982, the Mint began phasing in pennies made of 97.5% zinc with just a thin copper coating. But here's where things get fascinating. Both copper and zinc pennies were struck during 1982. And the U.S. Mint didn't just make one or two designs, they made 7 different varieties that year. Large date, small date. Copper, zinc. With and without mint marks. That's already a treasure hunt. But then, there's the 1982 D small date penny struck on a copper planchet. It's not supposed to exist. The Denver Mint, marked by the small d beneath the date, was believed to have only used zinc planchets for the small date variety. So when someone discovered a 1982 D small date penny that turned out to be made of copper, numismatists were stunned. This wasn't just an error. It was a full-blown mystery. How did it happen? The best theory is this. A few leftover copper planchets from earlier in the year were mistakenly used during the production of the small date dies at the Denver Mint. Only a handful, perhaps even just one, made it through unnoticed. The result? A coin that breaks the rules. A coin that wasn't supposed to survive. But how can you tell if you have one? First, look for the small date. On a genuine 1982 small date penny, the number 2 in the date curves upward more sharply, and the 8 appears more delicate and evenly rounded. The difference between large and small date is subtle, so a magnifier or comparison chart helps. Next, check for the mint mark. That little D beneath the date tells you it was struck in Denver. And finally, the most important part, determine the metal. A copper penny from 1982 weighs about 3.11 grams. A zinc penny? Just 2.5 grams. The difference is enough that a precise digital scale can tell you instantly what you're holding. If you have a 1982 D small date penny that weighs over 3 grams, stop everything. You might be looking at a coin worth thousands, but the 1982 D mystery doesn't end there, because this year was filled with transition errors, die cracks, doubled dies, and even off-metal strikes. There are known examples of 1982 pennies that were accidentally struck on dime blanks, thinner and smaller, resulting in strange, ghost-like impressions. And don't overlook coins with die varieties. Look closely at Liberty, the motto, In God We Trust, and the date. If anything looks doubled or misaligned, it could be a valuable error. Even the surface matters. Full red luster, no marks, sharp details? These coins receive the highest grades, and the highest prices. Collectors are still searching, still weighing, still checking. Because more 1982 copper small date pennies might be out there, waiting to be discovered in a box of change or a forgotten drawer. So if you've got a handful of old pennies lying around, take a second look. That small, unassuming coin might just be the one. The one that slipped through the cracks. The one that rewrote history. Now, the question you've been waiting for. If you do happen to own the rare 1982 small date penny made of copper, especially in high grade or certified condition, the value can be shocking. This elusive coin has sold at auction for amounts ranging from $10,000 to $37,000. So the next time you pick up a penny, don't just glance and toss it aside, weigh it. Examine it. Because the coin in your hand might be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Number 4. They say history hides in plain sight. And sometimes it hides in your pocket, a penny. Just 1 cent. Most people wouldn't think twice. They drop it in the tip jar, let it fall between the couch cushions, or leave it at the bottom of a dusty drawer. But what if that simple coin, the one from 1964, with a little D beneath the date, wasn't just a penny? What if it was a piece of American history, worth thousands? Today, we're diving deep into the world of the 1964 Lincoln cent, a coin that has turned up in rare forms, with mysterious errors and unexpected details that collectors are still chasing to this day. Let's rewind to the early 1960s. The United States was in a rush. The country was growing, changing, and minting more coins than ever before to keep up with economic demand. The Denver Mint, one of the busiest facilities, was working overtime. And in 1964 alone, it struck over 3.7 billion Lincoln cents. That's right, billions. Which might make you think, how could a coin that common ever be rare? Well, the answer lies in the details. The smallest errors. The slightest imperfections. And the remarkable few that slipped through the cracks unnoticed. On the surface, the 1964 penny looks ordinary. It features Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, his familiar profile still enduring since 1909. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall. But when you start to look closer, when you really examine the coin, things start to get interesting. One of the first things collectors search for is the mint mark. The small D below the year tells us it was minted in Denver. But not all mint marks were created equal. In 1964, mint marks were still being hand-punched into the dies. That process, done manually, created countless varieties. Some mint marks are off-center. Some are tilted. Others are doubled, creating a striking and valuable visual anomaly. Yes, doubled mint marks. On certain 1964 pennies, you can actually see the D struck twice, slightly offset. These doubled mint mark varieties are rare and highly prized by collectors. But it doesn't stop there. There are 1964 pennies with repunched dates, where the numbers themselves were punched more than once into the die, leaving behind faint, overlapping digits. If you look closely at the 9 or the 4 in the date, you might spot it. Then there are coins with die breaks, tiny cracks that appear as raised lines across the coin's surface. These are known as cuds or die cracks, and they can create all kinds of unusual and collectible patterns. Some cuds even erase parts of letters or distort Lincoln's image in fascinating ways. Other rare errors include off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing or shifted to one side. Some coins from 1964 were even accidentally struck on the wrong metal blanks, known as planchets. A penny struck on a dime planchet? That's a serious find, and here's a detail many overlook: the finish of the coin. Most Lincoln cents tone over time, becoming brown or red-brown. But a full red specimen, untouched, shiny, and glowing copper, especially from 1964, is much harder to come by. If it's in near-perfect condition? That's when values start to climb. So how do you know what you have? Start with weight. A genuine 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Any major deviation might signal a wrong planchet error. Next, examine it under magnification. Look closely at the mint mark, the date, and the lettering. Any doubling, distortion, or die damage could signal a rare variety. Then consider the coin's condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded above 65, especially if it's a full red, can be worth far more than a worn, circulated version. Now here's the twist. In the chaos of 1964, the US Mint also made an unusual decision. It stopped putting dates on proof sets for a short time and didn't strike any 1965 dated coins until mid-1965. That created a rush in 1964, with a flood of coins minted and errors more likely to occur under pressure. It's no wonder that so many unusual 1964 D pennies have surfaced, errors that may never be repeated again in US coinage. So, if you're holding onto a 1964 D penny, or if you find one in a box of old change, look again. You might not just be holding a piece of copper. You might be holding a mystery. A mistake. A treasure. And now, the question everyone's been waiting for. Depending on the type of error, the coin's condition, and whether it's one of the ultra-rare doubled mint mark or repunch date varieties, some 1964 Lincoln cents have sold at auction for amounts ranging from $12,200 to $74,000. So next time you see a penny on the sidewalk, maybe pick it up. History has a habit of hiding in the smallest places. Number 5. Have you ever held something so ordinary, yet so full of hidden possibility? A single penny. 1 cent. Just a flash of copper in the palm of your hand. But beneath that familiar face, Lincoln staring left, the year stamped beside him, there could be a secret that most people will never see. The coin we're talking about today is the 1973 Lincoln penny. And while billions were minted, only a few tell a story that continues to fascinate collectors, historians, and everyday Americans alike. Let's take a trip back to 1973. Gas was 39 cents a gallon. The Vietnam War was still raging. And while the Watergate scandal was quietly unfolding behind closed doors, the U.S. Mint in Denver was producing coins at full speed to fuel a growing economy. Over 3.5 billion 1-cent coins rolled out of the Denver Mint that year. And at first glance, every 1973 D penny looks like any other. It's copper-colored, with the profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front, and the Lincoln Memorial standing strong on the back. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because even in a year with billions of coins, mistakes were made. Errors happened. And when those errors occur in the world of coins, they can turn something common into something incredibly valuable. Let's start with the mint mark itself, that tiny D, under the date, that stands for the Denver Mint. And in 1973, mint marks were still hand-punched into the dies. That means each die was ever so slightly different. Sometimes, the mint mark is crooked. Sometimes it's punched in twice. And that's where things get exciting. There are 1973 D pennies out there with repunched mint marks, what collectors call RPMs. These are coins where the D appears to have a ghostly shadow behind it. Look closely under magnification, and you'll see the doubling, sometimes shifted sideways or tilted just enough to be noticeable. Then there are doubled dies, errors where the design was stamped more than once onto the die itself. These doubled dies can create dramatic visual effects, especially around the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date. The letters may appear blurry, thick, or have notched edges. If you've got a 1973 D with strong doubling, that coin could be something truly special. Another rare error? The off-center strike. Picture this. The coin blank doesn't line up perfectly during striking. The result is a lopsided coin, with part of the design missing entirely. The more off-center the coin is, while still showing the full date, the more desirable it becomes to collectors. But perhaps the most thrilling finds of all are the wrong planchet errors. Imagine a 1973 D penny accidentally struck on a dime blank. Or worse, a foreign coin planchet. These coins are lighter, thinner, or smaller than normal pennies and have odd metal compositions. When these slip through the mint's quality control, they become major numismatic discoveries. But even without dramatic errors, condition matters more than most people think. A 1973 D penny that's bright, red, and in pristine condition is already far rarer than most people realize. Most circulated examples turn brown or dull over time. But a full red coin, stored safely for decades, can catch the eye of any serious collector. The United States Mint didn't strike any proof pennies at Denver, so there are no 1973 proof coins, but high-grade mint state versions. Those are what collectors chase. Coins graded above MS-65, especially with sharp strikes and no spots or blemishes, are worth a close look. Now, here's a fun twist. Some 1973 coins were struck with die breaks, resulting in what's known as cuds. These are raised areas where the die cracked or a piece broke off during striking. These cuds can appear on the rim or across parts of the design, giving the coin a unique, collectible appearance. And don't forget the little things. Slight misalignments. Faint doubling. A weak strike on one side. All of these can signal a coin worth much more than face value. So what should you do if you find a 1973 penny? First, check the weight. A normal 1973 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams. If it's way off, you might have a wrong planchet coin. Next, grab a magnifier. Examine the date, mint mark, and lettering for signs of doubling, repunching, or die cracks, then check the surface. Is it bright red? Free of scratches? The better the condition, the better your odds of owning a valuable specimen. And finally, consider grading it. Coins certified by major grading companies like PCGS or NGC tend to sell for more, and give collectors confidence in what they're buying. So what's the bottom line? The 1973 penny might seem like just another coin. But hiding among the billions are a few rare and extraordinary examples, coins with errors, unique features, or pristine conditions that defy the odds. And depending on what you find, whether it's a doubled die, a repunched mint mark, or a perfectly preserved specimen, some of these pennies have been known to fetch amounts ranging from $3,700 to $42,000. Next time you see a penny dated 1973 with a little D under it, don't overlook it. Turn it over. Examine it. You just might be holding a miniature masterpiece, worth more than you ever imagined.